In the year 2479, deep inside the orbital station Helix Prime, doctors struggled to understand a soldier who should not have been alive. His name was Commander Rael Arden, and everything about him seemed ordinary at first glance. He looked human, spoke like a soldier, carried scars from countless battles, and wore the uniform of Earth's defense fleet with discipline in his eyes. But there was something about him that made the medical teams uneasy. His wounds closed within hours when they should have taken weeks. Burns faded overnight, cuts sealed as if time itself bent around his body. When he was brought in after the Clyros ambush, nearly burned alive by plasma fire, his body should have been reduced to ashes. Instead, he survived. His blood ran through the scanners again and again. Each test came back normal. Ordinary plasma, red cells, white cells, nothing strange, nothing alien. The doctors exchanged worried glances. They were missing something, something hidden deep within him. So they pushed further, activating the quantum DNA reader, a machine so advanced it mapped every atom, every thread of code written into a living being. The results appeared slowly, lines of numbers crawling across glowing blue holoscreens. At first it seemed routine, harmless. Then the screens flashed red, and the room fell silent. The results froze the lab. It was impossible, beyond science, beyond history. Commander Rael Arden's blood matched something that did not exist in any medical archive, something that was never supposed to exist at all. The computer displayed the match, 99.7% genetic correlation, Draco prime species. The doctors stepped back, their faces pale. One whispered under his breath, "This cannot be real. Dragons are myths." Another muttered, "No, not myths. Not anymore." The soldiers who guarded the lab shifted uncomfortably, their hands tightening on their rifles, as if instinct warned them they were standing too close to something dangerous. Rael lay unconscious on the med table, unaware of the storm gathering around him. His dreams were filled with fire. He saw skies burning with light, wings stretching across endless stars, and a voice whispering his name in a tongue older than Earth itself. When he woke, his eyes burned golden for a second before fading back to human brown, and no one dared tell him what they had seen. The doctors tried to bury the results. They classified the data, sealed the files, and sent encrypted reports to the High Command. But secrets do not stay buried on Helix Prime. Word spread through the station's corridors, carried in whispers, "The commander is not human." Some said he was an experiment. Others swore he was an alien spy. A few whispered the forbidden word, dragon. Rael himself felt the change inside. His body pulsed with heat. His senses sharpened. He began to hear sounds no human could hear, the hum of the station's engines as if they were alive, the heartbeat of soldiers standing across the room. He tasted metal in the air, the electric tang of plasma coils, and smelled fire when none was present. Memories that were not his own haunted him, flying above a world of molten rivers, roaring as lightning cracked across burning skies. Yet when he demanded answers from the doctors, they lied. "Your blood is normal," they said. "You're stable, Commander." But he knew they were afraid. He saw it in their eyes. Behind sealed doors, High Command debated. A soldier with dragon blood could be the most dangerous weapon in human history, or the greatest threat. Some wanted him studied, dissected. Others wanted him erased before word reached the alien empires that surrounded Earth's fragile territories. For if the galaxy learned that dragons had returned through human flesh, war would ignite faster than any star. Outside the lab, unseen and unheard, machines stirred in the dark edges of space. A signal traveled through ancient frequencies, carried far beyond human systems. Something had been waiting for this blood, for this match, for centuries. Now it had been awakened. And deep in his heart, Rael Arden felt it calling. His blood revealed nothing, until it revealed everything. Commander Rael Arden did not sleep the night after the test. Though the doctors had assured him that everything was fine, that his blood was normal and there was nothing to worry about, his instincts screamed otherwise. He was a soldier, trained to read lies in the eyes of enemies and allies alike. And when he had looked into the eyes of the chief medic, he had seen fear. Not fear of failure, not fear of war, but a fear directed at him, as though he had become something unknown, something that did not belong among them. As he sat alone in the recovery wing of Helix Prime, the silence pressed down on him like the weight of a dying star. His reflection in the mirror looked the same, short hair, scarred cheek, tired eyes, But inside, he felt wrong. He felt too alive, too strong, as if his body was no longer his own. He pressed a hand against his chest and felt the slow, steady thrum of his heart. It was not beating like it used to. Each pulse carried heat, like molten fire flowing beneath his skin. He clenched his fist. His knuckles cracked, and faint sparks of static jumped between his fingers before fading away. He stared at his hand in shock, but when he tried to repeat it, nothing happened. Maybe it was just his imagination. Or maybe the doctors were right to be afraid. Elsewhere on the station, the whispers had grown louder. Soldiers avoided him in the mess hall. Engineers fell silent when he entered the hangar. He could hear them muttering when they thought he was gone. He's not human anymore. I heard his blood matched something ancient. The command should have locked him up. These whispers clawed at him, but worse were the fragments of memory that invaded his mind. He dreamed of fire every time he closed his eyes. He dreamed of wings, vast, glowing, alive with heat, stretching across starry skies. He felt the wind of another world rushing past him, a world filled with mountains of obsidian and seas of liquid flame. These were not dreams. They were memories. But not his. Meanwhile, far above the orbital station, in a chamber of steel and glass reserved only for the highest ranks of Earth's Defense Council, the truth was being debated. The council sat around a glowing table, their faces grim. On the screen floated Rael's DNA analysis, lines of numbers and symbols none of them could deny. Dragons never existed, one admiral said sharply. They were stories to scare children. Stories do not leave genetic code behind, countered a scientist. This soldier is proof that something once walked this galaxy before us. Something powerful. Something dangerous. Another voice, colder than the rest, cut through the room. If the alien empires learn of this, they will see it as a threat. They will come for us before we are ready. We cannot allow him to live unchecked. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. Finally, the High Commander of Earth's fleet spoke. Keep him contained. Watch him. If he shows any sign of becoming less than human, we end this. No one dared argue. The order was clear. Back in the lower decks of Helix Prime, Rael continued his exercises, trying to convince himself that he was still the same man. He pushed his body harder, running drills, lifting weights, sparring with fellow soldiers. But no matter what he did, he could feel the difference. His strength was unnatural. He struck too hard, moved too fast. One punch during sparring nearly broke his partner's arm. Rael had pulled back just in time, but the look in the soldier's eyes afterward was not respect, it was fear. Fear spread quickly. That night, when Rael returned to his quarters, he found his door sealed. His access code no longer worked. 2 guards stood outside, rifles in hand. Orders from command, one said firmly. You've been reassigned. Rael's jaw tightened. Reassigned meant isolated. Contained. Studied like a specimen. He did not resist, not yet. He followed them to the restricted wing of the station, a place he had never been allowed before. Cold corridors, white walls, cameras in every corner. They locked him in a chamber with reinforced glass and no windows. Temporary, they told him. But their eyes said otherwise. Alone, Rael paced the room. His blood burned hotter now, as though it knew he was being caged. He pressed his palms to the glass, and for a moment, the surface trembled beneath his touch. He pulled back quickly, his breath sharp, heart racing. Something inside him wanted to break free. Something inside him wanted the stars. Beyond Helix Prime, in the depths of forgotten space, a signal pulsed. Ancient machines long dormant stirred to life, awakened by the genetic frequency revealed in Rael's blood. The signal carried across the void, searching, echoing. Somewhere in the darkness, an answer stirred. A colossal shape uncurled from the shadows, wings stretching across the black. Eyes older than empires burned awake. The dragon had heard the call. And on Helix Prime, Rael Arden could feel it. He didn't know how, but he knew. The dreams, the heat, the whispers, it was all leading to something greater. He sat in the silence of his glass prison, his fists clenched, his body shaking with power he could barely contain. They thought they could control him. They thought they could bury the truth. But the truth was alive inside him, burning brighter with every breath. His blood revealed nothing. Until now. The days inside the containment chamber blurred into one another, yet for Commander Rael Arden, time did not move the way it once had. Each second stretched long, heavy with silence and tension, and each night was haunted by visions that did not belong to him. He would close his eyes and find himself soaring through skies that no human had ever seen, his body casting a shadow over mountains of black stone, his wings stirring storms of flame. He would hear voices in languages older than humanity, voices that called his name not as a soldier, not as a man, but as something far greater, something that was meant to rule the skies of stars. When he woke, his hands shook, and his skin carried a faint heat as though his dreams had touched reality. The scientists who watched him from beyond the glass walls took notes, whispering to one another with unease. They thought the glass was strong enough, that the chamber was secure, but deep inside, Rael knew differently. He could feel the strength building in his body each day, his senses sharper, his instincts louder, his blood burning with a fire that grew restless. The chamber was no prison, it was a test of patience, and patience was fading. Outside, the station shifted under a new weight of tension. Rumors spread across the decks faster than plasma fire. Some believed Rael was infected with alien DNA. Others swore he was the result of secret experiments from Earth's dark archives. A few dared whisper the impossible, that dragons were real, and one now lived in human form among them. Soldiers refused to speak his name aloud, as though even the sound of it would summon something dangerous. And in the council chambers, debate turned darker with each passing day. Some officials demanded Rael's execution, believing his very existence endangered humanity. Others argued that he was the key to power the galaxy had never seen. They wanted him trained, controlled, used as a weapon. Yet none of them truly understood what he was becoming, and Rael himself barely understood it either. Then, on the 7th day of his confinement, something shifted. The dreams grew sharper, less like memories and more like instructions. He saw vast ships of living flame tearing through alien fleets, their wings cutting across void and fire. He saw a great war fought in silence, a war that ended with dragons vanishing into shadows beyond the stars. And he saw one final act, a message buried in blood, hidden in human veins until the time came for it to be awakened. When he opened his eyes, the words of the dream still rang in his mind, "You are the bridge. You are the return." Rael rose from his bed, his body trembling as heat surged through his veins, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He pressed his palm to the reinforced glass wall, and this time, the surface cracked under his touch, fine lines spreading like lightning before fading again. He stepped back in shock, his heart racing. He had not even used force. The fire within him was no longer sleeping. The scientists who reviewed the footage argued in panic. "He's accelerating," one said. "The transformation is coming faster than expected." Another shook her head. "We cannot contain him. If he continues, the chamber won't hold." Orders were sent to the High Command, and once more the Council argued. Destroy him before it was too late, or let the transformation run its course and seize control of the outcome. But even as they debated, forces beyond human authority had already begun to move. The signal that had awakened from Rael's blood traveled across space, and now it had found its mark. Deep within the cold void of a forgotten sector, ancient engines roared to life, and a colossal figure shifted in the darkness. A shape larger than warships, its body lined with scales that shimmered like living stars, opened its eyes for the first time in centuries. Golden light burned in the emptiness, and with a single beat of its massive wings, the silence of deep space shattered. The last of the ancient star dragons had heard the call, and it was coming. Back on Helix Prime, Rael could feel it. He did not know what, but his blood did. The fire inside him pulsed with urgency, warning him that something vast and powerful was drawing closer, something tied to him by a bond he did not choose. He sat in the corner of his chamber, fists clenched, sweat dripping from his skin though the room was cold. He whispered to himself, "What am I?" But no answer came, only the steady drum of his heartbeat that felt less and less human. That night, as the station drifted in orbit above the silent world below, alarms suddenly erupted. Sirens wailed through the decks, soldiers rushed to their posts, and lights flashed crimson across every corridor. Something had appeared at the edge of the system, something massive, something unknown. Radar screens scrambled with distortions, sensors screamed with readings they could not understand. And in the heart of his chamber, Rael stood frozen, his chest burning as though his blood was answering the call directly. He knew, without being told, that whatever had arrived was coming for him. He knew it in the same way he knew how to fight, how to breathe, how to kill, instinct, written into his very bones. The guards outside his chamber gripped their rifles tightly, fear in their eyes as the alarms continued to echo. One muttered, "This is because of him." Another swallowed hard. What if it's here for him? Neither of them realized that the man they guarded was no longer a prisoner but something far beyond their control. Inside, Rael's hands shook with power, flames whispering beneath his skin. His reflection in the glass no longer looked entirely human. His eyes glowed faintly gold, his breath steaming in the cold air. He could feel his wings pressing against the limits of his flesh, waiting to break free. The galaxy had forgotten dragons, but dragons had not forgotten the galaxy. And now, as the shadow of something ancient spread across the stars, Commander Rael Arden understood that his life was no longer his own. His blood was not just a secret. It was a signal, and the signal had been answered. The alarms on Helix Prime did not stop. Red lights painted the steel corridors as soldiers scrambled into position, their boots pounding like drums of war. Commanders shouted orders, engineers sealed bulkheads, and gunships detached from the hangar bays, circling the station like a swarm of hornets preparing to strike. Something enormous had appeared at the edge of the system, something that refused to be identified. The scanners could not lock on, the images flickered with static, and yet the shadow of it was unmistakable, a shape too vast to be natural, wings stretching across void, a presence that made even seasoned officers tremble. For generations, humanity had whispered about the dragons of myth, fire-breathing beasts that belonged to stories, not science. Now, that myth moved across their screens, its golden eyes glowing like small suns. It was not a ship. It was alive. And it was heading toward Helix Prime. Inside his containment chamber, Commander Rael Arden felt the creature before the station even saw it. His chest burned as though molten fire poured through his veins. His heartbeat matched the rhythm of something outside, as if his blood recognized the being drawing near. He gripped the reinforced glass with both hands, his breath coming heavy, his body trembling. He did not know how he knew, but the truth was undeniable. The dragon in the void was coming for him. He whispered, almost to himself, "It knows me." His eyes glowed gold in the dim light, brighter than before, and the glass beneath his fingers cracked again, a spiderweb of fractures racing across the surface. In the council chamber high above the station's core, the Defense Council erupted into chaos. Some officers demanded immediate attack, screaming that this was an invasion, that the beast would destroy the station if not destroyed first. Others argued that attacking could spark a war they could not win, especially if there were more of these creatures hidden in the dark. A third voice, colder and sharper, rose above the rest. This is no coincidence. The dragon outside and the soldier inside are connected. His blood called it here. The chamber fell silent at the accusation. The High Commander turned, his face pale, his voice hard. "If what you say is true, then Arden is no longer human. He is the key to this threat. If we end him, perhaps we end it." Orders were given. Rael was to be eliminated. The soldiers assigned to carry out the command moved with hesitation. Killing one of their own was already against every oath they had sworn, but killing a decorated commander, a man who had saved their lives in battle, cut deeper. Still, orders were orders, and soldiers followed them. 4 armored guards made their way to Rael's chamber, rifles ready, their footsteps echoing down the steel corridor. Inside, Rael felt them coming. His senses stretched far beyond human limits now. He could hear their footsteps long before they arrived, could smell the metallic tang of their weapons, could taste the fear leaking from their bodies. His blood roared like fire in his ears. He knew why they were coming. When the door to his chamber opened, the guards raised their rifles in unison. "Commander Rael Arden," one said, his voice flat and strained. "By order of the High Command, you are to be terminated immediately." Rael stared at them, his golden eyes burning brighter. He should have felt fear, but instead he felt pity. "You don't understand," he said, his voice low, steady, almost not his own. "This isn't about me anymore." One of the guards hesitated, his hands shaking on the trigger. Another barked, "Do it." But before any shot could be fired, the entire station shook violently. Sirens blared louder, walls groaned, and the lights flickered. The dragon outside had arrived. Its wings of plasma stretched wider than the station itself, and with a single beat, the void rippled like a stormy sea. The shockwave slammed into Helix Prime, throwing soldiers off their feet, cracking steel beams, rattling every bolt. Systems crashed, alarms screamed, and power fluctuated. The guards fell to the ground, their rifles clattering away. Rael remained standing, his body braced as though he were built for this kind of force. His blood answered the dragon's call, his veins glowing faintly beneath his skin. He pressed both hands against the glass again, and this time, the wall shattered outward in a storm of shards. The soldiers stared in disbelief as he stepped through the broken barrier, his body glowing with golden fire. "Stand down," one shouted, his voice breaking, but none dared move. They could feel it too, the heat radiating from him, the impossible power building inside him, the sense that they stood not before a man but something reborn. Rael looked at them, his voice carrying with unnatural weight. "If you fire on me now, you won't live long enough to regret it. The creature outside, it's not here to destroy you. It's here because of me." Even as he spoke, the dragon's roar echoed across the void, a sound so deep it rattled the bones of everyone on Helix Prime. Windows shattered, metal groaned, and countless humans fell to their knees without knowing why. The roar was not just sound, it was command, it was memory, it was history screaming back into the present. And in that moment, every human on the station understood, dragons were not myths. They were real, and one had come for them. The council, watching from their high chamber, stared in shock at the sight of Rael glowing with golden light on the monitors. One of them whispered, "He's changing." Another, pale with terror, said, "He's not human anymore." The High Commander clenched his fists. Then humanity must decide, do we kill him now, or let him lead us into a future we cannot control? Rael himself felt the choice closing in around him. His blood screamed for release, his body demanded transformation, his soul echoed with memories that were not his own. He knew he could not hide anymore, could not deny what he was. The dragon outside was not just a monster, it was kin. And the galaxy was watching. The roar of the dragon still echoed through the void, vibrating through the metal bones of Helix Prime like the cry of a living star. The sound was not meant for human ears. It was older, deeper, a call that resonated with Rael Arden's blood in a way that made his entire body tremble. He dropped to one knee, gripping the fractured glass of his broken cell as waves of heat poured from his chest. The soldiers around him backed away, their rifles forgotten, their eyes wide with terror. They had seen men scream in agony, seen men fall in war, but they had never seen a human glowing with fire, veins lit like molten rivers beneath his skin, eyes blazing gold as if suns burned behind them. Rael was no longer just their commander. He was becoming something else. Pain ripped through him as the transformation began. His muscles convulsed, his bones groaned, his skin shimmered with faint scales that faded in and out of existence. He gasped, clutching his sides, and when he opened his mouth, a burst of steam escaped, filling the chamber with the smell of burning metal. He heard whispers in his mind, ancient voices, layered over one another, speaking a language he did not understand but somehow felt. They told him not to fight. They told him to rise. The fire inside him had waited centuries for this moment, and now it would not be denied. Above the station, the dragon drew closer. Its body stretched longer than any warship, its wings shimmering with plasma storms, its eyes burning like twin suns. It did not strike. It hovered, silent, watching, waiting. Every human on the station felt its presence pressing down on them, an invisible weight that bent their will. Many dropped to their knees without knowing why. Some wept, some prayed, some screamed. But the dragon's gaze was fixed only on one being, Rael. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Officers shouted over each other, demanding immediate fire on both targets, dragon and hybrid alike. Others argued for restraint, saying no weapon in their arsenal could match such power. "He is turning," one councillor hissed, pointing at the live feed of Rael's glowing body. "Once the change is complete, we lose control forever." The High Commander's face was stone, his eyes locked on the screen. If he finishes this transformation, we may not have the power to kill him at all. Yet even as he spoke, his voice trembled, as though some part of him already knew it was too late. Back in the shattered cell, Rael staggered to his feet, fire bleeding from his skin in faint streams. The guards had retreated down the corridor, their weapons raised but useless, too afraid to fire. The steel floor beneath his boots glowed faintly red with each step he took. He raised his hands, staring as arcs of golden energy sparked between his fingers. His voice was raw, breaking, but steady. I am not just human. His chest heaved. He clenched his fists, and the sparks grew brighter. I am not just dragon. The voices in his head roared louder, pressing him forward. I am both. With a sound like tearing thunder, Rael's back split open, and from it unfurled wings, vast, blazing structures of plasma and light, shaped like a dragon's but flowing like living fire. They stretched wide, filling the corridor with golden flame. The heat drove the soldiers farther back, shields melting, armor trembling under the pressure. Rael's roar tore from his throat, a sound half human, half dragon, shaking the station as though the very walls would collapse. The dragon outside answered with its own roar, the two sounds colliding in the void like thunderclaps. The humans on Helix Prime dropped to the ground, clutching their heads, their ears ringing with a language older than empires. The message was clear even to those who did not understand the words. The dragons had returned. Rael stepped forward, his wings folding slightly behind him, their flames trailing sparks into the air. His eyes burned pure gold now, no trace of human color left. The guards stared at him, caught between terror and awe. One whispered, almost reverently, "My God." Rael turned his gaze toward them, and though his voice thundered, it carried no hatred. Do not fear me. Fear what is coming. This is only the beginning. The council scrambled to regain control. Fire the station's weapons, one shouted. Destroy both of them now. But the weapons refused to respond. Systems overloaded, screens went black, controls sparked with failure. The dragon outside pulsed with light, its mere presence shutting down the technology around it. For all humanity's strength, their weapons meant nothing in the face of such power. The High Commander slammed his fist on the table. Then Arden is already the enemy. If we cannot destroy him, we cannot allow him to lead us. But deep inside, even he felt the weight of history pressing on him, telling him that the galaxy had shifted, and humanity would never be the same. Rael knew he could not stay on Helix Prime. Already the whispers of fear were spreading like fire. Humanity would never trust him, not as he was. The dragon outside called to him, its eyes locked onto his own, its wings stirring the void as if urging him to follow. He could feel its thoughts brushing against his mind, not words, but instincts, memories, kinship. He belonged to it, and it to him. Yet he was not just dragon. He was human too. And that duality burned inside him like a question that demanded an answer. He looked one last time at the soldiers before him, men who had once called him commander, brothers in battle who now cowered before his fire. Tell them, he said, his voice echoing through the corridor like a storm. Tell them the dragons are not gone. Tell them the blood has awakened. His wings flared, the flames filling the air with blinding light, and with a single beat, he launched himself upward, tearing through the station ceilings, bursting into the open void. The humans on Helix Prime watched in stunned silence as Rael Arden, no longer entirely man, no longer entirely dragon, rose into the stars on wings of golden fire. The dragon in space roared in answer, circling him, its vast body glowing against the darkness. For a moment, they hovered together, ancient beast and reborn hybrid, both bound by the same bloodline. And then, with a surge of power, they vanished into the dark, leaving only burning trails of light across the stars. Helix Prime was left trembling, scarred, and silent. Humanity had witnessed the impossible, and nothing would ever be the same again. The stars swallowed them. One moment Commander Rael Arden soared beside the great beast, his wings blazing gold across the void, and the next they were gone, drifting into a silence deeper than war, deeper than history itself. Helix Prime shrank behind them, its alarms fading into the background of memory, until it was nothing more than a glimmer against the endless dark. Out here, the universe seemed both infinite and empty, and yet Rael knew it was not. He felt the presence beside him, vast and ancient, watching him not as an enemy, not as prey, but as something long awaited. The dragon glided with elegance, its body glowing with rivers of molten light, its wings stirring waves in the very fabric of space. Its eyes burned golden, mirrors of Rael's own, and when he looked into them he felt as though he was staring into the beginning of time. The voices returned, clearer now than they had ever been. They were not whispers anymore but echoes of a chorus, deep and resonant, filling his mind until his thoughts trembled under their weight. They did not speak with words but with meaning, heavy and ancient. He saw flashes of history carved into his blood, dragons soaring across young worlds, shaping mountains with their wings, bending the sky with fire. He saw wars fought not against men, but against alien empires that feared their power. He saw betrayal, sacrifice, and finally silence, when the last of the star dragons vanished into shadow. And then he saw himself, not as a soldier, not as a man, but as the bridge between two species, the last living ember of their legacy. The dragon's gaze locked with his, and he understood, his awakening had not been chance. It had been planned, written into his DNA, a signal left behind for the moment when the galaxy would need him most. But the weight of that truth crushed him. He was human. He was born of Earth, raised among its soldiers, bled for its wars, carried the scars of its battles. Humanity was his people. Yet the fire in his veins was not theirs. It was alien, ancient, and terrible. He could not deny it anymore. He was both, and because he was both, he did not belong fully to either. His wings folded close, his body drifting in silence beside the great beast. He whispered into the void, "What do you want from me?" The dragon's roar shook the stars, but inside Rael's mind it became meaning, to choose. The choice was as vast as the stars themselves. He could surrender to the fire, embrace the dragon inside him, and rise as something no empire could challenge. He could lead humanity not as one of them, but as their ruler, their savior, or their tyrant. The galaxy would kneel before the return of the dragons, whether through or through fear. Or he could sever that part of himself, deny the legacy that had awakened in him, and fight to remain human, fragile and finite, but loyal to his kind. To deny the fire, however, would leave him hunted, an exile, a man torn apart by power he refused to use. The dragons had waited centuries for his return, but the humans had made him who he was. His blood was divided, and now he was asked to choose which half he would be. Far away, Helix Prime still burned with debate. The Council declared Rael a fugitive, a threat to humanity's survival. Fleets were mobilized. Warnings were sent to allied worlds. And yet, in the quiet of barracks and mess halls, among the rank-and-file soldiers who had fought beside him, whispers of a different kind spread. Some said he was dangerous, but others called him hope. A man who could heal from wounds no one else could, a man who could stand against the alien empires that pressed on humanity's borders, a man with fire in his blood. The galaxy did not know yet whether he was a savior or a monster, only that he was something new. Rael closed his eyes, the dragon's golden presence pressing against his mind, urging him toward destiny. But destiny was not so simple. He thought of the soldiers who had fought under his command, men and women who trusted him, who had followed him into battles they should not have survived. He thought of their laughter, their courage, their loyalty. He thought of humanity itself, flawed, fragile, stubborn, endlessly reaching for the stars despite every failure. He thought of fire, yes, but he also thought of steel, of hands building, of voices singing across quiet stations. Could he turn his back on that? Could he abandon what had made him who he was? The dragon roared again, and Rael's wings flared with golden fire, tearing sparks into the void. His choice had not yet been spoken, but the weight of it rippled through the stars. He knew whatever path he chose, it would not be small. If he sided with humanity, he would bring dragons back to fight beside them, to defend them against the coming storms. If he sided with the fire, humanity itself might burn, replaced by a new age where dragons ruled once more. Both futures blazed before him like twin suns, and both demanded sacrifice. He drifted closer to the great beast, its massive eye locking with his. The meaning pressed again, choose, and the galaxy will remember. Rael's chest burned. His voice was a whisper, almost broken, but steady. I am not ready. The dragon's reply shook him to the core. Then be ready. The war is coming. In the distance, shadows stirred. Across the galactic rim, fleets moved, drawn by the signal Rael's blood had unleashed. Empires that had waited in silence now turned their gaze toward humanity, hungry for the fire they thought long dead. The return of dragons was not a secret anymore. The war would come, and when it did, Rael Arden would have to stand at the center of it, neither fully human nor fully dragon, but something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. His blood had revealed nothing, until it revealed everything. And the galaxy would never be the same again.